Okay, this is my group of neighbors and friends. I hope you can see them all. And there's one more over there.
There you go.
Okay. So hopefully that's going to, okay. Good evening, thank you for coming. We're glad to have you here. I'm going to start out by telling you a true story, and it's really heartbreaking, but it's absolutely true. It's somebody that I know. There's a intelligent, talented young man by the name of Robert. When he was in high school, he got his SAT scores in the top 1% in the country. That gives you an idea of how brilliant he was. He had unlimited potential. He had a future ahead of him where he could have been anything and done anything that he wanted to do. In this paper, I'm going to tell you the connection between schizophrenia and marijuana, which a lot of people are surprised about. We are hearing a lot of static in our country about legalizing marijuana, and young people in particular are being convinced that it's harmless, that there's nothing that they have to worry about, that it's just like alcohol or tobacco, and that there's no ramifications that they need to worry about. And so I am hoping that the evidence that I will present tonight will be convincing, because it is not worth ruining your life for. This young man, Robert, had so much potential, but his mother suspected when he was in high school that he was doing marijuana. But his father is a very trusting man, loved his son, and he refused to believe that he could be doing that. It wasn't until he got into the University of Georgia, a top-tier school. He got in really easily, and then he started missing classes, and pretty soon he flunked out of school. And that's when his parents started to realize that there really is something going on here. He married a woman who also did marijuana. They had a child. This young man with so much potential, by the time he was 25, was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And for all practical purposes, his life was over. He had a complete personality change. His marriage ended because of his psychotic behavior. He spent a lot of time in jail, and still does to this day. He spent a lot of time in mental institutions. He cannot hold a job. He cannot have a license. His mother passed away, and his father has spent thousands and thousands of dollars trying to get him help. But unfortunately, it hasn't helped. And that is because a schizophrenic frequently does not have the presence of mind to want to help themselves. And so that is something that is frequently missing in somebody that has been diagnosed. There is a researcher by the name of Semple et al., that means there were a lot of researchers that were in on this study, that testify that this drug is not innocent the way it's being promoted. This young man, after having gotten out of a mental institution, went to buy drugs. He was beaten so badly that his father, when he went to the hospital, did not recognize his own son. There have been times when he has threatened to kill his father. Now, this is a young man that loved his family before all of this started to happen. But he can no longer function in society. It turns out that Robert is a textbook case of a person who has taken marijuana and then been diagnosed with schizophrenia. This is not uncommon. But no words can adequately describe the heartbreak and sorrow that his father has experienced for 30 years. A French psychologist by the name of Moreau gave anecdotal evidence 200 years ago about the connection between the mental illness schizophrenia and what was then called hashish. You've probably heard about it. Well, it's a derivative of cannabis or marijuana. Today, all these states are trying to legalize marijuana. And the reason that they are doing it is because it can give them a tax revenue. The states can end up with money from these sales for different uses, but my contention is that it is not worth the risk if it's going to be destroying lives, and that they need to give the rest of the story. Anybody that's going to use this needs to have the whole story before they indulge in this drug. There was a researcher by the name of Goldberger and his associates that said that alcohol and tobacco are very different from marijuana, the makeup of marijuana. And nothing can be farther from the truth than to say that marijuana has the same kind of effects on a human body that they do. So one of the things that I would like to share with you is my credibility. Why am I able to talk about this? Because you might think, well, that's a strange thing, a strange subject for her to be discussing. Our son recently passed away after a very long illness with cancer destroying his body. Towards the end, he was in absolutely excruciating pain. Totally broke my heart to see what he was going through. It got to the point where opioids did not help the pain. Nothing was helping the pain. And so his doctor recommended that he start taking marijuana. And Jeff thought about it and then decided against it. Full disclosure, when Jeff was young, he stopped coming to church for a while. He was not active in any kind of religion for a while, and he did marijuana. He was very familiar with this drug. He decided against it because he had 2 teenage children. He had told them from the time they were young not to do drugs. And he refused to let them see him doing drugs after he had told them that, because he felt like he would be a hypocrite. And so basically, his love for his children was even more powerful than this overwhelming pain that he was going through. And that's the reason that I chose this topic. There's a very fine website called Elsevier, which is very authoritative and tells the truth about topics. And they have said that the risk of taking marijuana is very real, that most people are not aware of it. Today, young people are convinced that there is not really a problem. They're trying to legalize it as recreational drugs. So what does that say to you? This is fun. This is carefree. But it's anything but. Legislators, as I said, are trying to legalize marijuana to get revenue in their state. But I'm going to share with you the experience of Colorado, which was one of the first states where it was legalized. And I don't think that this is being publicized enough. What has been the fallout from legalizing marijuana in Colorado? So, who is at risk for developing schizophrenia? Well, it turns out that especially youth who started using very young, who have used it for an extended period of time, who had some kind of childhood trauma, or, interestingly, had urban upbringing. So that has been the majority of cases. However, some researchers have found that even those who have started taking marijuana recently early are showing signs of schizophrenia as well. So nobody can claim to not have a risk factor. Colorado legalized marijuana in 2012. So it's been just over 5 years. The National Institute of Health, very authoritative source, has verified that ER visits in Colorado increased 5-fold for mental health related problems in the emergency room after it was legalized. That right there proves my contention that marijuana leads to mental illness. World Psychiatry reports that many people use marijuana for depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. But they go on to prove that marijuana actually makes these things worse, not better. So people who are already suffering from these problems are finding later that the marijuana actually made their situation worse instead of calming them down and making them feel better. These are some of the following symptoms, and these are only a handful. There are many more. Some of the symptoms of a person that has schizophrenia. Hallucinations. They will hear or see or smell things that other people do not hear or see or smell or feel. They will hear voices inside their head telling them to do things they would not or normally ever do, or telling them to say things they would normally never say. So it's a total personality change. They have delusions. They think that they are the target of controversies, conspiracies, or harassment. They have a fear of impending doom, so they cannot live a normal life. Many of them develop hypochondria and worry about every single little thing. They cannot have a normal life. Sometimes they develop speech problems, and this is probably related to the fact that they now have an inability to think clearly, fragmented thought processes. So it would be very difficult to carry on an intelligent conversation with somebody who is in a schizophrenic state. There is a decline in daily personal hygiene. So they can no longer take care of themselves, the way that they dress, the way that they bathe or not bathe. And so I would hope that young people listening to this would stop and think about the fact, do they really want to take this risk that this might happen to them? Another symptom are odd frames of reference. That means that they see messages all around them. For instance, in a person's clothing, they see messages, or the color of a car driving by. They see hidden messages on TV, and they think that the TV is talking to them or talking about them. Paranoia is probably the most common known symptom of schizophrenia. They think that their neighbors are conspiring against them or spying on them. Sometimes they also have apathy, which is a lack of interest in things that formerly were very favorite activities. There's another symptom called flattening, which means that they have blank facial expressions and flat voices. So basically their personality has totally changed and is no longer evident to other people around them. Recovery is not impossible, but it is very, very difficult, and it takes a great deal of hard work, and it requires a level of commitment that is usually lacking in schizophrenic patients. So they have gotten to the point where they can no longer take control of their own life. And so most of them do not recover because of this. Now, what's the opposition to this? We've probably all seen the publicity about those that are trying to legalize marijuana. There is a legitimate use for it medically. Some people experience relief from some of the pain if they are able to use marijuana. And so there is a reason for that, even though one study showed that over time, marijuana actually increased the pain and didn't decrease it. So there's a lot about this drug that we do not understand and that has been promoted incorrectly. There is another study that was done, and it was inconclusive, and it showed that different people react differently to marijuana, and that's why they couldn't do a real study on it, because there wasn't enough vital evidence that was saying the exact same thing. It just shows you the volatility of this drug. Tax revenue seems to be the main reason that politicians are trying to legalize it, but I certainly think that they need to be notified as to what can happen to the constituents in their district if they promote this, and do they want that on their conscience? My rebuttal to that opposition is this. The legalization started to take place before all the evidence was in. There is more recent research showing the danger of this drug, and it needs to be publicized much more than it is, so that people can have the ability to make a really wise decision as to whether or not they want this in their state. A large 4-year study out of Australia showed that cannabis is associated with more, not less pain over time. The information that I shared from Colorado was from the denverchannel.com. Where did the money go that they have been earning from all of these sales for the last 5 years? Some of the money did go to build parks and homeless shelters, but much of the money has been spent on marijuana management programs. There are another 15 different school programs on substance abuse. Other educate youth on how to make wise decisions about marijuana. So a lot of this money that they're getting from marijuana is going back to try and show kids that this is dangerous stuff. And I think that it's sending a double message. You know, on the one hand, they're legalizing it. On the other hand, they're telling these kids, well, gee, this can be very dangerous. There has been a connection between marijuana or cannabis and mental illness, as I said, for over 200 years. Very few people are aware of that. Legalization has convinced many that there is nothing wrong with this drug. If it is legalized, surely it can't be harmful. There has been more recent scientific data published that now shows more of a connection between the use of cannabis and the life-destroying mental illness, schizophrenia. Young people contemplating the use of this drug need to know the whole story and the whole truth, what the possible ramifications are before risking this psychotic behavior, which for many is a path of no return. I contend that it is not worth the risk. Thank you.